Rockstar Games get endless praise for pretty much all of their various games, and that's definitely praise well earned, and I think one of their best by far is Red Dead Redemption. You can say it's the winner of countless Game of the Year awards, even though that's a bit of a moot point considering that applies to half the games they worked on. But I still think its biggest achievement is just perfectly capturing that feeling of playing as a gunslinger in the West. The kind of guy who chews up rocks and spits out gravel, one of the best video game protagonists of all time, John Marston.
I got me one of them Williamson boys.
I got me one of them idiots who give marshals a bad name.
I like this game so much that I even platinumed it twice on my PS3, once for my first time playthrough and then another time after my PS3 died, and I felt like I had a sense of duty to go back in there and do the whole thing again. It of course went on to spawn a prequel, Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that I still have mixed feelings over. Mostly I think for just how it kind of made me feel like I was playing in slow motion half the time. And I know that people will sing that game's high praises until their throats are sore, but I gotta say for me, Redemption is the best of the Wild Bunch so far. What's kind of interesting is that we don't even know the existence of this franchise to Rockstar to begin with. Nah man, the first game in the series was Red Dead Revolver, which was originally being developed by Capcom as far back as the year 2000. Still remember seeing that old E3 video for their version of the game, and I gotta say I still think that version looks pretty awesome. It's sure a hell of a lot different to what we got in the final product. Somewhere along the way though, it seems Rockstar took over development and finished it off, and as a result it doesn't quite feel like a Rockstar game, because it isn't. You can really see the influence from both studios here. I think the wacky characters, the arcade gameplay, and the art style is very Capcom, but then the dialogue and the music, most of which is taken from a whole bunch of actual spaghetti westerns, is just pure Rockstar. And yeah, it's a pretty good soundtrack, don't get me wrong. I even heard a few tracks in there that Django Unchained borrowed. Still though, there's more to a game than just the music, and despite this interesting mix of developers, which is really kind of like oil and water if you stop to think about it, Red Dead Revolver just wasn't a very good game, and time I don't think's been kind to it either. Now I know you can't always trust review scores, but there is a reason why this game is one of Rockstar's lowest rated titles, and part of that reason too why you don't ever really hear people talking about it. The story is you're playing as a bounty hunter named Red Harlow, whose parents are killed in the prologue by some kind of mysterious stranger.
I reckon your pa's better off dead.
A few moments later.
Years later, halfway through a marathon of collecting bounties on wanted criminals, Red then finds out that the guy responsible is still alive and tries to track him down.
We ain't telling you nothing, stranger.
But outside of the title and the premise though, like, it almost has nothing to do with redemption. There are definite similarities though. I mean, I've always kind of thought that Red's appearance is very similar to John's was, and the character Annie Stokes is more or less just Bonnie McFarlane. She's a blonde-haired, acid-tongued ranch owner who has to defend her home when it's attacked by bandits. Yeah, it kind of sounds familiar. There's a hub town called Brimstone where you can visit the general store, you can buy guns, and head to the sheriff's office to pick up bounties.
Now I reckon you could really line your pockets if you don't mind hunting down a woman.
Plus, this game also introduced the Deadeye and the dueling mechanic, both of which were pretty big features for the rest of the series. But apart from that though, like, it's just a bit of a forgettable run-of-the-mill shooter. Every mission is just kind of made up of like a small deathmatch style arena, where you fight waves of enemies as they spawn in, eventually then taking on some kind of boss or bosses before the whole thing ends. And look, yeah, that might be fine, only the shooting is just kind of awful. Aiming feels stiff and unresponsive, the game just often flat out ignores your inputs, and every single enemy in the game here are just complete bullet sponges. It also just feels schizophrenic. I mean, at one point you're fighting clown midgets and a circus ringleader who spits out fire and teleports all over the place. Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, and don't even get me started on the melee combat. With these really crazy difficulty spikes with some of the bosses, the whole thing's just a bit of a slog to get through. The option to play it on the PS4 or the Xbox Series X in like a quasi-remastered version, I mean, it is kind of cool, but there's just no reason to really go back and replay this. Unless you want to see the deformed offspring of what happens when two polar opposite developers butt heads to make a video game.
I will see you in hell.
Thank you for coming. I'll see you in hell.
Nah man, the best thing to come out of Red Dead Revolver is Red Dead Redemption. And I mean, that's why you're all here anyway, right?
Will you ride with us?
All right.
Thank you, John Marston. It's gonna be a bloody job.
I don't think I know any other kind, sir.
When Red Dead Redemption was released in 2010, I feel like playing through it was really one of those one-of-a-kind experiences. And by that I mean like we didn't really have Western-themed games on that kind of scale back then. About all that comes to mind before this was Gun and the Call of Juarez series. What Rockstar essentially did here was take the same formula they'd used in their other open-world titles and apply it to a Western-themed game in the early 20th century. Around the time an early iteration of the FBI is forming and bringing law and order to the country. You're playing as John Marston, a former outlaw now forced to work for the Bureau with his family being held hostage and no choice left to follow their orders and hunt down his former comrades, bringing these guys in dead or alive.
Can we assume one of my commitments is cleared?
Unfortunately, nothing is cleared, John, until your obligations are met.
You see, it turns out that John and his gang have a bit of a shady past, a backstory that Red Dead 2 would go on to develop a bit further, and it's kind of insinuated that him and his buddies weren't exactly the nicest people in the world.
We robbed banks, trains, held people ransom. We killed people we didn't like.
So his main goal is to find 3 of these members, Bill Williamson, Javier Escuelia, and then the leader of the gang, Dutch Vanderlind, a guy who's supposed to be charismatic enough to sell ice to the Eskimos.
I think that's what they call 2 for the price of 1 out here in this wonderful place.
Working with the Bureau is supposed to be his get-out-of-jail-free card, and the looming threat of his family being harmed is like all the motivation this guy needs.
But we choose to play a different game. So calm down and play along with us.
During the opening cinematic, you get the gist that the era of the so-called Wild West is really coming to an end. So John kind of sticks out a bit here like a relic from a dying species. However, that doesn't stop him from being instantly likable, and he really is one of the best video game protagonists of all time.
I think there's some school children down the way you can go and frighten.
Oh, hardy fucking whore.
You just kind of feel this instant connection with the guy, and jump right into the role of being this low-key badass taking on the entire county.
Sure. Somewhere between a threatening stare and the soldier's arm to the teeth. Yeah, you had me.
Red Dead Redemption's as much of a game as you play as it is something you experience, and by that I mean it's not like this super challenging, crushing game. With all these hardcore missions you're going to be stuck on for hours. I mean, yeah, every now and then you might fail a mission and have to restart it, but it's more about being on the journey than it is being this super pro gamer dropping bandits with repeating rifles and a 6-shooter. You can still definitely play the game that way if you want to, and it is pretty fun to do so, but it never really forces you to. There's a similar combat system to GTA 4, that being cover shooting combined with a pretty generous lock-on mechanic, where you just sort of need to have your camera facing in the general direction of an enemy, and then when you aim down the sights, it's going to lock on automatically.
Good shooting, Marston.
Only it is a lot simpler now, because this time you've got regenerating health as opposed to fixed health, and then to make it even easier, you've got John's Deadeye ability, and using that mechanic is going to make you pretty much unstoppable.
No, get the camera!
Even getting ambushed by a group of bandits in the middle of nowhere becomes a non-issue, as you can pretty much just bring time to a standstill, target all of them easily, and then shoot before they even get a shot off. The weapons start off being pretty basic, just being hand-me-down revolvers and repeater rifles, but later on you'll start to get better versions, along with more modern inclusions like automatic pistols and a bolt-action rifle, both of which just tear ass. I mean, it's not this super deep complex combat system, but it is effective and it's satisfying. And those trademark Rockstar physics make a return, making for gunfights that are almost comical at times, with the way that enemies fall and tumble when they're killed. It might also have some of the best rope physics I've ever seen in a video game. Yeah, a big part of the game world here is going off and doing bounties to make extra bank, and you're obviously going to get more cash for bringing in someone who's still breathing. So that involves lassoing and hog-tying these virtuous, upstanding members of society and then hauling their ass back to the nearest town. And there's just always something so satisfying about getting these guys with the rope and then reeling them in like they're a fat fish on the end of a hook.
I'm gonna get you back for this, you hear me?
Now if you've played a Grand Theft Auto game before, which I'm assuming most people have done, then you know exactly what you're in for here. That being a super long series of story missions combined with a huge amount of side content to see and experience at your own pace. From bringing in that never-ending amount of criminals for those fat bounties through to cheating at poker games, to the point that you can get your money's worth just going off and doing all of this side content alone without even touching the main storyline. As for the mission structure, it's pretty much the same as the GTA games. You head off to a mission giver on the map, you watch an introductory cinematic which gives you a rundown of what you're supposed to be doing, then you're sent off on your merry way.
I'll race you right now.
If it makes you happy.
In the GTA games, this would always involve driving some kind of vehicle to get to your destination. But of course, Red Dead takes place in a time long before cars ever existed, so your main mode of transportation is horses. Yeah, dog, horses.
Look at my horse is amazing.
Sticking in the main roads, you'll be riding a lot faster and smoother, and you've also got to contend with the horse's stamina because if you tucker these guys out, they'll kick you off faster than Adidas kicked off Kanye West.
All they care about is lining their pockets.
What I really like too is how the workaround for all of this horse riding is by just letting you hold down the X button the entire time to maintain the same speed as your allies. In the GTA games, you pretty much always had dialogue going on when you were driving, which was always pretty much the main form of exposition, plus you also had to concentrate on the road and where you were going. Here though, you can just hold down one button and still get the feeling of traversing the world, but also be able to focus on what's being said.
Looks like he's holed up at the old Pleasance house.
As a result, I find that I always become really invested in these missions and I really care about what the outcome is.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
There's one early on in the game here where you're rushing to a settlement that's been attacked by bandits, and it has this really long build-up where you're on horseback with your posse, following this path of destruction, murder and mayhem that the group's left in their wake, as it becomes obvious that they really don't give a shit who stands in their way. And then by the time you finally get to that farm and track them down, I was pretty much frothing at the mouth to kill these guys for what they'd done.
Some bandits came by and took us hostage. They're holed up in the farmhouse.
And it all ends with a suitably epic shootout as the last bastion of this group is hunkered down in a house. You go on to save the day, so yeah, mission accomplished, right? Only you still have to listen to the lamentation of the survivors, showing you that the damage has already been done.
You're just some man on a government payroll taking money that the rest of us have to pay for with our lives.
Yeah, this is a harsh and unforgiving world, and John still can't really do much to prevent that. It just makes the whole world seem a lot more real and believable, as does all these random little encounters you come across with all these complete strangers.
That's no way to treat a woman.
This could be something pretty basic, like coming across a store owner getting robbed or someone having their horse stolen. There's actually like a concerning amount of horse stealing going on in this game. Then you can choose whether or not to help these people, and if you want to kill or just restrain those would-be thieves.
Oh, you might want to deal with this fella yourself.
I actually got to the point here where I would literally stop and help every single NPC I came across.
I've been marooned out here. Can I trouble you for a ride to the next town?
Like at one point I was walking around town and had to jump into Samaritan mode to stop some psycho from cutting up some poor lady with a fucking machete.
I suppose not all men are bad.
Some of these interactions are scripted too and almost kind of serve as mini missions in themselves. Like coming across some guy who says the love of his life has run away and then to find out later he's talking about his horse.
You got problems, friend?
Oh, I ain't got no problems, not now that she's back with me.
And what's always been one that's got a lot of discussion is about this creepy dude you come across in a top hat, which a lot of people have often theorized is either God, the devil, or death, just slowly creeping his way into John's life to suggest that maybe his time is coming to an end.
I don't have a game, John. Listen, sometimes I just wish I'd known more about life.
Shut up, bitch!
What I've always appreciated about Red Dead 2 is that despite being set on this humongous map, there's still something that doesn't feel overwhelming about it, and comparing both this and the second game back to back, I think highlights why I found that pre-sequel less exciting to play through. More importantly than that too, in this game you can get around the map quickly and easily. At every town there's like a stagecoach that'll take you anywhere you need to go, and if you drop your camp out in the wilderness, it also gives you fast travel to essentially any location on the map for free. Skate's good balance between keeping things feeling realistic, but also including those kind of elements that you'd really want to see in an open world game. You know, the kind of mechanics that don't waste the player's fucking time. I don't know, man, I just kind of felt like with that second game, Rockstar were more interested in making this giant epic cowboy simulator, then they also forgot they were making something that was supposed to be fun to play through. That's, I guess, why they included a completely pointless feature like your horse realistically getting out of range, along with removing fast travel, because, yeah, Rockstar, I totally want to ride across an entire map in real time to get where I need to be. Honestly, I don't really even consider this a proper game. It's more like an interactive movie that every now and then allows you to do something exciting.
Here we go!
In Red Dead 1, all I wanted to do was get to that next mission and see what fun stuff it was going to let me do. In Red Dead 2 though, all I wanted was for the mission to end so I could actually make my own fun.
Pick the wheel up!
And part of that too is just also due to the ridiculous amount of missions to get through. Red Dead 2, for instance, has 107 missions, the majority of which nothing really happens, whereas Red Dead 1 only has 57, but these are far more memorable and often action-packed.
They are boarding the rear of the train!
So the story begins with John having to get inside a fort where his old mate Bill Williamson's hiding, but to do this he'll need the aid of the local marshal, along with Nigel West Dickens, a snake oil salesman whose wagon gets turned into like a makeshift Trojan horse.
You, sir! Come up here! Step right up!
Then there's Seth, a grave-robbing treasure hunter who knows where to find an old Gatling gun because someone at Rockstar watched The Wild Bunch. And then finally, an Irish dude named, well, Irish, who knows where to find ammo for the Gatling gun.
Fuck off, boyo! This don't concern you!
When a man with a sing-song voice tells me to fuck off, it always concerns me, boyo.
It not only gives you a pretty good reason for working alongside all of these random characters, but it actually feels like you're working towards a goal, and gives you like an overarching objective across the first couple dozen or so missions.
We gotta go faster, partner!
However, before any of that even comes to pass, you gotta pay off your debt to Bonnie McFarlane.
Would you mind riding with me to Armadillo? I've got to get some supplies and I could do with the company.
Of course.
Yeah, John got a bit careless at the start there, using his torso to catch a bullet, and he was just lucky that Bonnie happened to take him in and fix his wounds, or else this would have been a really short game. Bonnie's not a marshal or a bounty hunter, she owns a ranch. So that means the kind of missions you're going to be doing for her mostly involve things like herding cattle, breaking in horses, or shooting animals that are trying to attack the livestock. You know, like an actual ranch owner. I am kind of impressed that they managed to include like such a robust herding mechanic in the game to begin with, and that's kind of good because you're going to have to do this like 2 or 3 times during the first couple of hours of the game. And it does mean that a lot of these starting missions can feel very slow. When you've got to direct stray cows back to the herd for like the 50th time, you're almost going to start to wonder why you bought this game to begin with. Still though, it's a lot more exciting than the missions in Red Dead 2, you know, unless you're a fan of slowly riding horses for 15-minute intervals listening to people talk the entire time.
I hope they all make it.
Anyway, by the time you reach Armadillo and start working alongside the Marshal is when the game really starts to pick up the pace. And this is when this whole first act just really starts to come together, and some of these missions are just Kino with a capital K.
Let's say we try our hand at racing again. There's a meet at Rathskeller.
You're trying my patience, Mr. West Dickens.
Red Dead has, without a doubt, I think some of the best voice acting and motion capture of all time, and I think a big part of why it's all so good is that they chose to use relatively unknown voice actors. I mean, the guy who voices John Marston has about 7 credits to his name on IMDb, and almost half of those being Red Dead related. It means, as a result, you're focusing on the dialogue itself, instead of the fact that you're listening to Samuel L. Jackson delivering it, or that you're sitting across from Keanu Reeves in some kind of futuristic diner.
Hey, wasn't easy for me either.
My favourite cinematic is one that happens early on in the game where Bonnie gets kidnapped, sorry, spoilers, and one of the bandits responsible rides on into town to deliver the message.
Oh, Mr. Marshall! Mr. Marshall!
And this whole scene is just amazingly animated and scripted. The way this guy's realistically fighting back against the random movements of his horse, his delivery of the dialogue, and the way he just looks and sounds like an absolute scumbag. I feel like this voice actor seriously missed out on some kind of award for his performance.
This is the land of opportunity, mister! And I'm giving you the opportunity to get your daughter back.
And the crazy thing is, I don't think we ever see this guy again for the rest of the game. I mean, we certainly don't see him talking again, that's for sure. So for this one-off character to be so memorable is a pretty huge testament to the voice talent on offer here.
You boys have a pleasant afternoon. Yeah!
It almost kind of downplays Dutch as an antagonist, and by the time you finally end up meeting him, he just really feels like one more in a long line of memorable people you've already had to interact with.
Let the woman go, Dutch.
There's actually a whole lot of depth to all these missions too, and not only are they advancing the story, but they're also introducing new mechanics to the player.
Remarkable! The eyesight of an eagle.
One of these missions where you're working alongside Nigel West Dickens is one of the first missions where the game teaches you how the Deadeye mechanic works. Yeah, much like Red Dead Revolver, Deadeye is kind of like this game's version of bullet time, where you can slow things down and take precise shots against your enemies, firing off a bunch of bullets before they can even react. It's just an insanely cool mechanic with really awesome sound design, and again, another reason why I don't like the second game as much, considering that they pretty much just copy-pasted the same superpower straight over to Arthur. Anyway, not only does this mission teach you that Deadeye can be used to easily lock onto targets, which is going to be very handy moving forward, but then it also teaches you that you can use it non-lethally, shooting the guns out of people's hands. And this is a pretty big deal, because throughout the game here you're constantly getting challenged to duels. I mean, there's no glove slapping or 5 fingers to the face. Just someone talking shit in the middle of the street and just begging to be put in their place. That rhymed.
You're making a big mistake.
Although you're often forced to kill people in duels during the story missions, for a lot of these random encounters you can get through them without any violence at all. By targeting and shooting the gun out of someone's hand, you know, instead of the brains out of their skull. In fact, if you're good enough, you can even shoot the hat off their head for extra swag points. Let's also talk about how this was the era of morality systems being in every single video game. Fallout 3, Infamous, Mass Effect, and Bioshock 2 were all games that let you choose whether or not you were going to be like a shining beacon of honor or a giant gaping dickhole that took advantage of every single opportunity you got. Not only are these missions with Nigel West Dickens memorable and often pretty funny, but they're instilling the concept of the core game features you're going to be using for the next 20 or so hours. One of my other favourites is one you do for Seth, where you've got to sneak into this mine to find that Gatling gun, and then after the whole thing's over, you get to push this thing out on the rails, and then eventually ride it down the track like it's a mini roller coaster.
Must kill Mo. Whee! Must kill Mo. Whee!
Kind of gets to the point where you've become so distracted with doing side missions for all of these characters and getting caught up in their own little storylines that you almost start to forget why you're there in the first place. And then more than that, even after you pull off this near perfect act of deception, infiltrating the fort and gunning down all of these outlaws, you still don't even complete your original goal, because somehow Bill manages to escape and get to Mexico. This of course ends up with one of the best moments in the entire game when you first arrive in Mexico and have to ride to the nearest town hearing that Jose Gonzalez song played in the background.
It's so far away.
I think I'd put this in like the top 10 most memorable moments in video games. Definitely at least when it comes to the use of the soundtrack. I mean, it's up there with Snake climbing the world's longest ladder in Metal Gear Solid 3 and James finding out the truth in Silent Hill 2. All you had to do up until this point was pretty much capture one person, and it all seemed so simple. But instead, he got away, and now you're in a new territory, with no idea where he is or where he's gone. You've got no allies, you've got no friends, you've just got this giant new uncharted area to explore. The vastness of the open world starts to set in, and the impossible nature of this task starts to seem even more daunting. And on top of now having to still find Bill, you also now need to find Javier, so the task is essentially doubled in size. And when you start to listen to the lyrics of that song, man, I mean really listen to them, it all starts to make perfect sense. Only, you know what, it doesn't really matter, because now you're wearing a poncho and acting out your very own spaghetti western in a whole new country.
Welcome to Mexico, amigo!
Somehow along the way, you get caught up in fighting the rebels alongside the Mexican government before then switching sides and eventually helping the rebels overtake the government. Interacting with all of these colourful characters along the way, from a retired gunslinger through to the captain leading the army. What I think's really cool too is how this game is not afraid to portray other characters as being more badass than John is. It's like with a lot of other games in general, they always kind of make it so you feel like you're playing as the guy who's really like the cream of the crop. Like look at Nico for instance in GTA 4, you'd put your money on that guy winning a fight 9 times out of 10.
Oh no, I shit my pants.
But in Red Dead, you frequently encounter these side characters that you just know could really fuck John up. Even just like the Marshal, for instance.
Sounds fun. What's happening?
Let's first consider this guy's line of work, right? Which is dangerous enough to begin with, but then also consider how old he is, which kind of suggests that he's obviously pretty damn good at his job if he's still alive and kicking.
Get down from that horse, boy, or I'll shoot.
During that one mission where you come across that poor settlement taken over by the bandits, when the gang investigates the nearby barn, you'll even notice that he draws his guns faster than John does. Honestly, it happens so quickly you might not even see it, but if you go back and watch the whole thing in slow motion, you can see he's just that little bit faster on the draw than John is. Later on in Mexico, when you meet the infamous gunslinger Landon Ricketts, you see, yet again, a guy in a very dangerous profession who's like a bazillion years old and still not dead. And the fact this guy teaches you an upgraded Deadeye technique, again, shows you just how proficient he is. There's also like a pretty cool fan theory here that this guy's actually read Harlow from the first game, which I guess kind of explains how he could be the only person to show John an upgraded version of the Deadeye.
I can handle a gun okay, partner.
I can't emphasize enough here just how much different the game becomes once you get to Mexico. It's almost kind of like you're playing a different game at this point, and the overall plot of trying to bring your former buddies to justice now just seems like a distant memory. It's all about causing all that mayhem south of the border, and these are outright just some of the best missions in the entire game. And again, I want to say too, if you don't try on that poncho and spend at least a few hours with it during this portion of the game, well, you're playing the whole thing wrong.
You want more?
The only issue I think the story has is that it really does kind of deflate as you get near the end of the campaign. Campaign? I don't know, story I suppose?
Oh, your wife sends her regards.
Because after that epic shootout in the fort and then literally overthrowing an entire government, it goes back to really just being the smaller petty problems of like a handful of people.
It's over, man.
The final town that serves as like your base of operations is named Blackwater. And this place is like the first bastion for the New West. Completely different to everywhere you've just been and explored. The streets are paved, the buildings are neat and tidy, and the area seems mostly free of crime. People in the town are upstanding and neatly dressed, and you kind of feel like a piece of trash that's been blown in by a stiff breeze. These final few missions also feel just mostly by the numbers, and while they're not bad, they feel kind of much more toned down after what you've just been through and experienced. Mostly just involves riding to one place, shooting a bunch of people, and then riding back. There's another mission involving a machine gun, but I mean, by this point, you've literally done that like 2 or 3 times, so it has kind of lost its luster. And then, I mean, damn dog, the entire final chapter takes place as John pretty much hangs his guns up and becomes a rancher, trying to mend the relationships with his wife and son.
For an illiterate gunslinger, you sure know how to make a girl blush.
You go back to herding cattle again, yippee, and shooting crows off the top of the silo, along with dealing with a corn shortage at Bonnie's ranch. Oh no, I guess they ran out of Follow the Leader CDs. One entire mission here is just driving a wagon all the way to Bonnie's ranch, watching a scene as John unloads the wagon, then riding all the way back to the ranch. And I get that this is intentional and by design. Plus, I think on some level, it's trying to lull you into like a false sense of security. Maybe trying to replicate too how boring John's life has become. And also how out of place he is when he attempts to fit back into modern society.
Of course, my angel.
Get out of there!
You ever see that movie Shawshank Redemption? There's a classic scene in it where a character named Brooks is released from prison after being locked up for decades. And it should be a joyous occasion, only the guy's been in there for so long that he's become accustomed to life on the inside. And at this point, he doesn't know any different. So when he tries to return to the so-called normal world, he's out of place and everything feels alien to him. That's kind of like what it looks like with John to me. The guy who's been a career outlaw living on the road and avoiding the authorities for most of his life, now suddenly has to abide by the rules and tend to his own little pocket of earth. The outfit he wears during this sequence is plain and boring, and compared to almost every single other outfit in the game, it doesn't have any buffs or attributes at all. Plus, at this point in the story, you can't change out of it.
Come on, old man.
You know when Guile beats you in Street Fighter 2 when he says, go home and be a family man? It's almost kind of meant as like an ironic insult. As in, you know, there's genuinely nothing wrong with being a family man, take it from me. But when you apply it to a nomadic character like John, yeah, it starts to have a bit more meaning. Then when you finally get to that ending, horrible as it is, it starts to make sense. And it's one of those rare instances when a video game has literally left me speechless. Even kind of still hurts thinking about it now.
That's a nice way to greet somebody.
Where Red Dead still truly shines as well, even all these years later, is the music. And you've really got to give Rockstar credit for the music they put in their games. I mean, just go compare the soundtrack in a game like Bully, for instance, to something like The Warriors. Or then, you know, Manhunt to now something like Red Dead Redemption. This also comes from the peak era of dynamic soundtracks, which means the game adjusts the music depending on the player's actions. Almost like you've got your very own customized soundtrack going on the entire time. You'll hear this assortment of weird, unorthodox instruments, which kind of sounds like a bunch of people playing around inside an old tin shed, but crafting this bizarre and really captivating mood. The music captures the loneliness and the vast sense of the outback being desolate and barren, but then it also changes during those moments of combat, just never really sitting in one place.
Now get behind that outhouse! Ain't sure we seen the last of them.
Going to be handy too, because there's going to be a lot of moments in this when you're just out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. Whether you're off hunting animals or clearing gang hideouts, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be something in the background to help keep you cemented into the game world. Yeah, and how about those graphics and that backdrop? Damn.
Mr. Marston, back in the land of the living, I see.
It's actually like a really smart setting from a technical aspect if you think about it, because unlike a lot of other open world games, which often take place in cities, where you've got to have cars and pedestrians running around the entire time, in Red Dead, it's the complete opposite. Here it's vast and usually empty. And you're not expecting to come across people just randomly walking around in bumfuck nowhere, because, you know, why would you? Either way though, it's just a gorgeous looking game, especially during sunrise and sunset. There's never been any kind of official remaster for this thing, but if you've got an Xbox Series X and a copy of the game on the 360, the Series X does that wonderful thing here where it cleans the whole image up, making it almost look like the kind of thing you'd see come out in 2022. I mean, yeah, some of the character models and the animations do look a bit dated now, but the environments themselves, you know, that being the element which takes up 80% of the screen, I think still looks amazing. I don't know what the going rate is for environmental artists worked in the video game industry these days, but I can guarantee whoever worked on this definitely got underpaid. A big issue open world games can often have is that all these areas of the map starts to look familiar. I mean, look at all the Far Cry games where the trees on one side of the island often look the same as the trees on the other. The thing is though, Red Dead doesn't seem to have that issue, and there is just such a stark difference in the wildlife and the vegetation throughout each area, but then also with the people and the architecture. And I think you could show me like a screenshot of any random location here, and I could probably tell you exactly where it is 99% of the time. When I'd run out of things to do in this game, I'd often just get on a train and stare off into the scenery as this train went along its route, just admiring how nice everything looked. And I mean, when a game is enough to keep you hooked off something that mundane, you know it's got to be good. The constant presence of creatures and critters running around here also helps to make it feel like a living, breathing world.
Ah, time for a cigar.
I also kind of feel too like there's an underrated simplicity to the map in this game. I mean, even though it's pretty damn big, you're still really only split up between two parts of the map here, north and south. North being America and south being Mexico. It's almost kind of old school in a sense, like how Grand Theft Auto 3 was split up into 3 main islands, Vice City being split up into 2, and then GTA 4 again being split up into 4. And again, not to heap more shit on Red Dead Redemption 2, but that is a big part of why I think that game ultimately didn't hook me as much as this did. It's just a good example of how making something bigger and more complex doesn't necessarily make it better. Yes, I get it, being able to eat food, change your clothes and shave your ballsack is a nice attention to detail. But shit man, sometimes all you want to do is get off your horse without having to sit through a fucking 15-second long animation, you feel me? That's why I think too, no matter how many Red Dead games or Grand Theft Auto games come out, they're all just going to be doing inferior versions of what the first game managed to pull off. Red Dead Redemption really has the fortune of being the first of its kind in that way, not so much for the genre of open world games, but I think definitely for the genre of open world Western game. And it's one of those instances where no matter how long I talk about it or how in-depth I get, I'm still only going to be scratching the surface of what it has to offer. I mean, damn dog, I haven't even really touched on the multiplayer mode, the unlockable outfits, or the DLC. Oh yeah, the DLC. As something of a swan song to standalone expansion packs, Rockstar released Undead Nightmare in Halloween of 2010 as a spin-off from the original game's story. One where John returns home just as a zombie apocalypse takes place. Yeah, nice timing. Funnily enough too, this expansion pack came out days before the first season of The Walking Dead did, and it was really at the forefront of the zombie movement before games just become inundated with them and super oversaturated. I mean, consider after this that Call of Duty Black Ops would come out, really cementing that game's zombie mode as one of the most popular modes in the entire COD series.
Lock and load.
And then we'd get Dead Island, Telltale's The Walking Dead series, Lollipop Chainsaw, DayZ, and State of Decay. And that was only in the first 3 years that followed.
Funny kind of salvation.
Anyway, this is a pretty damn good expansion pack. And I think it has just the right kind of pacing for an opening, letting you settle into things before then dropping that bomb that the country's been taken over by this zombie plague. During the opening cinematic, the first person we see turn is Uncle, who John quickly beats to death with a lamp.
What the hell is wrong with you, crazy old bastard?
And I think everyone who's familiar with that character from the base game probably wished that John just did that a lot sooner.
That's a nice way to greet somebody.
In fact, I don't think John even knew that Uncle was a zombie. I think he was just killing him out of principle for busting in during the middle of the night.
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
You was a zombie?
Either way though, he makes the common rookie zombie killing mistake by not aiming for the head. So shortly after that, both Abigail and Jack get infected and turn. John then ties them up for their own safety as he heads off to Blackwater to see what's going on. And I like too how he's nice enough to leave them plates of food for when he's gone.
Jack, be kind to your mother.
As you get to Blackwater, you soon find out this whole zombie thing is a real pandemic, and you eventually end up back at Mexico for the finale as you put to rest some cursed Aztec gold. Now, I remember playing this for the first time when it came out and finishing the entire main missions in a single sitting. I mean, that's how much I enjoyed it for my first playthrough. And this is just such a good era for really great video game expansions, along with Minerva's Den for Bioshock 2 and Lair of the Shadow Broker for Mass Effect 2. Seeing all of these returning characters, some of whom are supposed to be dead, coming back again, just feels like borderline fanfiction, and it captures everything that made Rockstar such fun developers back then. Just kind of highlights too how boring their games have now become. It just seems they no longer take chances like this and make these kind of experiences anymore.
Ain't it always?
Well, they let in too many foreigners. Just shut the goddamn border, or things like this happen.
The main issue this expansion has, though, is that outside of the few main missions, there's really quite a lot of repetition to the content. I mean, practically every single enemy in the game now are zombies, I mean, no surprise. And killing these guys is just a matter of shooting them in the head, regardless of what type they are, whether they be normal, fast, or fat. Yeah man, the best cure for a zombie has always been a shotgun to the face, and this still rings true in Undead Nightmare. Then apart from that, you're also going around cleansing graveyards by burning coffins and stopping off in towns to help the survivors fight back against the zombies. Going around to all these NPCs and giving them like a handful of bullets because that speeds the process up.
Just doing what I can.
And the shooting is still okay, but it also wasn't really a shooting system designed with horde shooting in mind. You don't have that many crowd control options, and even the ones you do have are really limited because of the reduced amount of ammo. You get a blunderbuss, which is awesome in concept, only you have to make your own ammo with this thing by picking up the body parts of zombies you've already killed. And it just doesn't feel like it does enough widespread damage to justify how much time you spend having to loot zombie corpses to make the ammo. Also too, zombie corpses, is that a double negative? The actual story missions are entertaining, and again have some pretty funny interactions with John and all these returning characters.
You've got the compassion of a mass murderer and the intellect of a cow patty.
I'll stick your faith in this gun where the sun don't shine.
And it is fun to explore this bizarre timeline that strays off the canon story. It's kind of like in Back to the Future when Marty returns to 1985 and finds that Biff is now basically Donald Trump.
What the hell is that?
The dialogue between John and all of these random mouth-breathing rednecks you come across is just hilarious as well. Really captures the hysteria of what might have happened if a zombie outbreak ever occurred at a time when most people couldn't even spell their own names.
I ain't one of them, you fool.
Well, how do I know?
They can't speak.
But the best thing about the DLC is how it just full-on leans into being batshit insane. They fully embrace the cheese here, with an intro narration that sounds like the guy from the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland.
Marston awaits whatever life will throw at him. When hinges creak in doorless chambers.
Even being able to go out there and find the 4 horses of the apocalypse and even tame them. These horses are dope too, man. They're super fast and they have infinite stamina, which is handy because fast travel's all but done away with here. But then once you've finished all the main missions, there's just not that much incentive to keep playing, and it's like they somehow managed to find a worse fate for John here than what happens to him at the end of the base game. Overall though, yeah, it's still entertaining, and I still remember spending hours trying to find that fucking chupacabra in Mexico. Plus, it really made me wish that Rockstar would get back into making single-player expansions for their games.
Stay there while I deal with your half-witted son.
Red Dead Redemption's size and scale, I think, is probably the main reason why I don't replay it as much as I replay other games that I'm fully obsessed with. You know, like Max Payne and Metal Gear Solid 3.
Come, sir! I have a way to sate both our desires.
But I think its status as one of Rockstar's best, not to mention just a really great pioneer for the open world genre, is something that few can argue with. I don't know why they still haven't ported this thing to PC. I really do think Rockstar just hates seeing their fans happy these days, especially if that GTA Definitive Edition is anything to go off. But maybe keeping it on the consoles was all part of the plan. I sure can say that reclining back on my couch and dropping 6 bandits at a time with John's Deadeye ability, along with riding my horse off into these serene sunsets, still ranks up there as some of the most fun I've ever had with this hobby. And I don't think that any number of sequels or prequels they go on to make will ever change that.